I imagine much is being said of David Lynch's Dune this year, owing to the much anticipated release of Denis Villeneuve's 2021 adaptation. I intended to discuss the newer film in time, which I have seen, but not without initially sharing my thoughts on the original 1984 picture, as well as some toward Frank Herbert's Dune mythos in general, insofar as I'm familiar with the novels. As well as being the basis for Iron Maiden's beloved song To Tame a Land, Frank Herbert's 1965 novel Dune is claimed to be the greatest selling science fiction novel of all time, as well as one of the most acclaimed, accoladed, and, most impressively in my opinion, continually popularly adored to this day. It is pretty easy to understand why successive generations find this novel so enrapturing. Dune is metal as fuck. But how is something so apparently pulpy, so seemingly downstream of Edgar Burroughs' John Carter yarns, revered as though it were penned by Robert Heinlein? Probably because Frank Herbert sought more inspiration from Heinlein's literature than Rice Burroughs'. Frank Herbert took Dune very seriously as a piece of science fiction, whilst it is hardly remembered as a cornerstone of hard science fiction, as opposed to Isaac Asimov's work, or even Heinlein's. Dune is considered a landmark of soft science fiction. It is said that Herbert had deliberately written in the suppression of technology within the Dune universe so that he might address the future of human thought rather than the future of human tools. Actually, insofar as speculative hard science fiction is concerned, Herbert attempted to grant Dune a degree of logical authenticity where he could, and was informed enough to be able. It is commonly cited that Dune the novel originated when Frank Herbert was assigned to write a magazine article about sand dunes near Florence, Oregon, known as the Oregon Dunes. He claims to have gotten over-involved, ending up with more material than the initial article had required. Said article was never even written. Still, it left Frank Herbert with the confidence to pen a novel that took seriously the sciences of ecology, climate, geography, and engineering. Another important facet of Dune's contemporary appeal is its ambitious world-building. Little in science fiction literature prior, or perhaps even since, attempted to compose an entire universal history. Presumably this was more considered the domain of fantasy, as plausibly pioneered by Tolkien's Legendarium, rather than science fiction, so Dune was gifted a unique appeal amongst the genre's canon. Arthur C. Clarke once even claimed that The Lord of the Rings was the only work which could compare with Dune's uniqueness. So yes, Dune is far more palatable to prospective readers than Asimov, Heinlein, or Clarke's work might be. I'm not as versed in literature as I could be, though I have read Dune and considered it a tremendous experience. I can imagine some finding the whole hero's journey aspect of Dune a tad dated, although I, as an appreciator of both pretentiousness and pulp, absolutely love that there exists this classy fusion of the two forms, though perhaps Herbert would resent the pulp label. So this, combined with the occasional psilocybin-inspired psychedelic prose, makes it easy for me to consume, and love, the sprawling, heavily contemplative odyssey that is Frank Herbert's Dune. I have not read any of the sequels to Dune, though I understand they, including the posthumous novels, contain obese galactic emperors slowly transforming into sandworms, the resurrections of everyone, the return of the banished machines, and the realization that Duncan Idaho is the chosen one because he had so many goalers. Wow, crazy stuff. So on to the films. Now, we never got to see Alejandro Jodorowsky's Dune, which I believe would have been the greatest film ever made, so do spare me your cynical masturbation. The 2013 documentary is a fantastic watch if anyone has not seen that and or would like to learn more about the doomed predecessor to Lynch's Dune production. And so on to Lynch's Dune then. I love David Lynch, although David Lynch is the Beatles of experimental left field cinema. This is to say, we all love the Beatles, I love the Beatles, but I find it so frustrating how many people become Beatles, or Lynch in this case, obsessives, and yet seem unable or unwilling to explore anything that surrounds the artist in question. People don't know what they're supposed to like. Okay, I'm not implying whatsoever that anyone is supposed to like anything at all. Although it certainly seems to be the case that people don't seem to know if they like something unless it has a popular approval behind it. The Beatles are ubiquitous, so one can open their mind and enjoy the deepest cuts you can find within the catalogue. Anything bizarre on the White Album that catches your fancy, you love it. You don't care what anyone else thinks of it. Everyone loves the Beatles, so why not? it doesn't seem like thinking for yourself, because everyone loves the Beatles. I'm allowed to like their song. Cool. Hey, David Lynch is so trendy, one can pretend to like garbage such as Fire Walk with Me, which reduces female character study to a perverse romanticization of sexual trauma, whilst dismissing, this person might, the more daring cinematic experiments of, say, Guy Maddin, Bill Viola, Raoul Ruiz, or even someone like Zhang Lu. Because, I don't know if I'm allowed to like that. I don't want to think for myself, that's scary. So that being said, I'm a fan of David Lynch. I think The Elephant Man, Wild at Heart, and Fire Walk with Me are the only features he has made which I do not love. So yeah, I love his take on Dune. Lynch's Dune has been traditionally lambasted by both fans of the novel and fans of Lynch's other work. Fans of the novel, I can kind of understand why, kind of. Although the Lynch fans, it just strikes me as, well, like they don't have the psychological permission to enjoy a science fiction film without extensive subtitled philosophical exposition. Their loss, losers. Some of you may already be able to tell that the version of the film I viewed for today, based on these screen caps, was the 3-hour extended cut credited to Alan Smithy. This cut includes deleted scenes and an alternate introduction consisting of voiceover narration of illustrated stills, as opposed to the jarring fading in and out of Princess Corono. When she initially appears, her face rockets into frame accompanied by a whooshing sound effect. It's so fucking bizarre. This is preferable to me, the illustrations, that is. Although to those who sooner treat and enjoy Lynch's Dune as a series of point-your-finger laughs, that sequence might be missed. Speaking of such oddness, the dynamically disturbing spectacle, accused of being Lynchian by some, that is the Harkonnen heart-sucking scene, is removed in this extended cut for reasons I am unsure of, although it is missed. So is Raban's mouse juice box and the Doctor's verbal adoration toward the Baron's saws. I ought to mention, I've seen Lynch's Dune several times, although my copy was of the theatrical cut, and the Harkonnen heart-sucking was arguably my favourite scene of the entire film. Yeah, I know. So I was very observant of any cuts made to that moment in particular. Earlier, I implied disdain for those who would rather mockingly appreciate Lynch's Dune as a bizarre, nightmarish mess. This would be seen as in opposition to seriously appreciating the film as an enormously creative, ambitious production, bursting at the seams of imagination, sincere confidence in realizing the novel's incredible imagery, and a general aesthetic distinctiveness the likes of which God has never seen. Lynch's Dune makes one of the most purely visually captivating films I have ever seen. I don't even mean in terms of technical impressiveness. This isn't Lawrence of Arabia, or even the original Star Wars trilogy, but just in terms of it being purely interesting. Almost every frame, each set, each shot is intriguing or enticing in some way. I took so many screenshots for this film that I knew I definitely had to write a lot in response to it. But yeah, I absolutely love cinematographer Freddie Francis, especially his prior career as an extremely effective horror director. And I've always adored that Lynch employed him as a regular cinematographer on certain features. Although, in terms of pure cinematography, of course, Freddie Francis is no Freddie Young, let's say. Dune is not a technical landmark compared to the aforementioned examples, Lawrence of Arabia or Star Wars. Or especially even compared to something like Tron. That's a weird example, but still. Although it is certainly one of the more, most impressive of these big-budgeted post-Star Wars high fantasy productions. There were countless of the of genre films, these huge worlds created, these alternate futures or pasts or dimensions crafted through these lavish post-Star Wars Lucas-inspired productions. Things like Alien, Excalibur, Dragon Slayer, Star Trek 1 to 3, Conan the Barbarian, Legend, Kroll, 2010, The Year We Made Contact, Return to Oz, Life Force, Beyond Thunderdome, or even Millennium. I absolutely adore this particular period of high monetization in cinema, and Dune fits in very neatly with those mentioned. It might not be Blade Runner in its believability, or even Brazil in its bizarreness, although its set design and production realization are utterly magnificent. This is not a film which a viewer can ever mistake for taking place on Earth. I also must say I really love this film's music, partially courtesy of my man Brian Eno, the artist behind Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy, which I claim to be my favourite album of all time. Eno was perhaps unable or unwilling to compose more than one track for Dune, and so they thought, let's get one of those bands that everyone likes, like Toto, like Toto. I love the grandiose orchestral cheese which greets our ears. In fact, in the extended cut, it underscores, adds an ambiance to the character moments which successively build up to the dramatic narrative shifts. I did not notice this degree of prominence normally in the theatrical cut, at least not to my memory, and I felt as though it was a fantastic touch in this extended edition, and reminiscent of the Maurice Jarre approach to film score composition. But yes, what a lavish production this is. In particular, the design of Gaiety Prime is legendary, and the Baroque styling of the Emperor's Palace is absolutely spectacular. Now, it isn't a perfect production, obviously. At least part of the appeal of this aesthetic is its novelty. There is an undeniable clunkiness to much of this film's physicality. Perhaps there is an appeal in viewing a clumsier rendition of a text which certainly doesn't read as though its characters are actors in costume. It could be considered sexily contrarian to praise Lynch's Dune without any reservations whatsoever, but I prefer not to form opinions on the basis of how others might react to them. I'm not that bored or, well, pathetic. I'm interested in my authentic responses to stimuli, and I cannot deny that what I experienced with David Lynch's Dune is one of my favourite cinematic voyages to embark upon. I shall present you eventually with another video discussing the 2021 Dune Part 1, sharing my thoughts on Denis Villeneuve's venture. How does it compare? Wait and see. And more importantly than that, do keep an eye out for a discussion I intend to record with an associate, with a compare and contrast of the two Dune pictures in mind, 1984 versus 2021. Hopefully this will make for a great discussion and for some more awesome material to upload in the near future. Thank you all very much, and have a beautiful day.